Hi, I am Bill Hodges, and this is Spotlight on Government. And I have with me Amy Hale. She is the Executive Director of Champions for Children. Amy, glad to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
I think everybody agrees that if children are treated right in the beginning, that for the most part, they will grow up to be productive citizens. But we have jails full of people who aren't productive citizens. And I suspect part of that problem goes back to the problem you're facing every day.
Yes, there's a lot of data out there about an individual's early childhood experiences and how that accumulates over the lifetime. And so our agency for the last 18 years has really been around preventing trauma in children's lives, so that if we can get to families with very young children and set them on the right track, we believe we're setting them up for a lifetime for success. So we like to work with families when they're pregnant, when they have the little itty bitty babies, but we do have services all throughout that child's experience.
You know, what I remember from years ago, there was a movie that said, "You are now what you were when." And what it does, it goes back and it looks at where you were when you were a kid and the experiences you had and how you're repeating those experiences again. And I suspect part of the problem you face is that chain of children who were abused, who become abusers, and maybe they don't even know they're abusing, correct?
Absolutely. So, we say it simply that you can't give what you were never given. So you can't give a nurturing environment if that's something that you never received. So some of our parent education services are with families who have significant trauma that they're dealing with. So we have to help them heal first so that they are in a position to come along and support their own children. So it's working with the parent at the same time that we're working with the child. So we have some very specific services for that, but we also recognize that all families need support. So when we each brought home...
Oh, I think so.
Yes.
I mean, the only experience I had for raising my children was I was one once.
And that was a little bit time ago.
Yeah.
Yes. So we all say nobody gave us the magic manual when we came home with our child. And you come home and you're exhausted. That birth experience wasn't what you expected. And you look down and you're like, now what? Now what am I supposed to do,
right?
Quit
crying.
So we want to recognize that all families need support. So we offer services for any family in Hillsborough County, regardless of their income or risk factors. And that's really through the generosity of our funders, such as the Children's Board of Hillsborough County.
And you get funding from other government agencies, hence you're on the show, Spotlight on Government.
Right. Yeah, so the Children's Board, as you know, is a local government revenue source here in Hillsborough County. And it's an amazing entity that in Hillsborough County, we've decided that we want to invest in children so much we tax ourselves. So we do get a significant portion of our dollars through that source. And then we have a Department of Health and Human Services
I've known several of the board members on the Children's Board, and they've all been very, very good people.
Right. Yeah, I raised my daughter here in Hillsborough County. I used to work at Children's Board of Hillsborough County. And it was an amazing opportunity to have that level of investment in my hometown. So I
Let's
appreciate it.
drop back a little bit and find out a little bit about Amy. Now, I didn't tell you I was going to do that, but
but I know something about that subject.
What brings you? I hope so.
Yeah.
You're young for Alzheimer's. I'll tell you, I'd like to know what your education and your background is that brought you to this point.
So it's always an interesting journey, and if you had asked me when I was growing up here in Tampa, if this is where I saw myself, absolutely not. But it is an interesting lens to turn back and go, at what point did I make a decision to land where I am now?
Well, the reason I ask this isn't to pry into your background, but it's also to share with the audience what kind of backgrounds might get to where you're at.
Well, so that's...
And the choices you made have that happen.
Right. So I go Bulls. I'm a product of the University of South Florida. I have an undergraduate degree in anthropology and went back for a degree in education.
Good.
Yes.
So if you dig up anything, you can tell what it is, right?
I wish I had stayed with archaeology. That is pretty fascinating. But like most folks, when you come out with your undergraduate degree, you're kind of looking for a job, and I like liberal arts. I'm a big fan of a liberal arts education.
Paid, right?
Right. How do I start paying back those student loans? So I landed work for a nonprofit over in Pinellas County called Operation PAR, and I worked with juvenile offenders. And I loved it. I loved working with teens. They're such an amazing group of individuals, and they're inspiring to work for. And these were kids who were having some challenges in the delinquency system. And really, so fast forward 10 years from that, I was hired at the Children's Board because I had that experience in juvenile justice, and they were looking for somebody with that experience. I was at the Children's Board for maybe 6 weeks when they went through a strategic planning process and said, oh, we're now going to have you head up all things children birth to 5. And I'm like, okay.
Oh, wonderful.
Great.
What a challenge.
So at the time, my daughter was 2, so that was great for me personally. I was able to
right in the point.
That's right. I was like, here's my little learning lab right there at my feet. So that's really where, and this was at the, around 2000 when a lot of the science around infant brain development was coming into the mainstream. So it was a fascinating time to be diving into that literature. And since that time, I'd gone back and got my master's in applied anthropology. So I really like anthropology. I like how anthropology teaches you to view the world and to work with people who don't quite think the same way that you are, but to value those relationships. So I really enjoyed my anthropology experience and use it, I think, almost every day in working in human services. Now I'm working on my doctorate in public health because I really see that that's the impact that we can have at Champions for Children is at that population level. Is we do incredible work with individual families, but what can we do at the community level to start shifting the needle around child abuse prevention?
Child abuse in itself is an awful thing. We've already discussed that to a point. And you mentioned juvenile offenders, and I work with a number of them up in Ohio as a volunteer. That was before they had to do all the background checks and everything. But I still got through, even if they did that. But the fact was, I learned from these young people that many of them had been abused, either physically or mentally, and more often mentally.
Right. When we say child abuse, most people have kind of a mental model that that's physical abuse. But we know that much more, it's like an 80-20% difference between neglect or social emotional abuse is much more prevalent than the physical abuse. So that's the thing that you don't necessarily see except in behaviors. And when you see these acting out behaviors such as juvenile offenders, you're like, that makes a lot of sense if I put that in the context of where they grew up and how they grew up and how they were supported. So when I started in juvenile justice, it was at the tail end of HRS here in Florida, right before it became Department of Children and Families, and it was the same data system. So the kids we were seeing in the delinquency system, you could clearly see that they had been in the dependency system or child abuse system, 10 years earlier. And so it was a pathway. So when I had an opportunity to do prevention, I jumped on it because that's the only way we're going to shift this. What we're challenged with right now is to go upstream and try and prevent this from ever happening.
It's got to be extremely difficult because so many families are steeped in their traditions. And many of the kids that I met in the juvenile system were extremely bright.
Yes.
And they would say to Dad, but why? I want to know why. And Dad would reach up and smack them.
So what we try to do is we do have a couple different parenting groups. Again, going back to prevention, we work with parents and their children together. And when I say parents, I really mean any adult caregiver. So that could be grandma, that could be Ann, it could be a caring neighbor.
Oh, yeah.
So,
was the extended family.
Exactly. And so most of the work
or
we
older
do,
brothers and sisters?
Absolutely. So whoever's in that caretaking position for the young child. And we work, although we work with children of all ages, we really try to work with children under the age of 5. That's really kind of our expertise in the community. And so we work with the parent and the child together, and what you would see us doing is a lot of singing and playing and dancing, and it all looks like fun, but it all has a lot of intention behind it. We know that children learn through play and parents learn through play. So we're facilitating play that builds those attachment behaviors between that caregiver and the child. And so from an outsider's point of view, you might be going, well, all they're doing is learning itsy bitsy spider. And what we can tell you is, no, they're making eye contact, they're having positive touch between each other, they're engaged with each other. That child has an adult who's involved in their life right now, and those are all the protection factors that's going to make a difference for that child to feel confident as a young person and grow up on their successful trajectory.
I think the most important you said was people learn most when they're having fun.
They sure do.
I don't care whether you're 5 or 50. I've done seminars for over 30 years. And I walk out on a stage of 5,000 people or 4,000 people. And if I don't entertain them, they don't walk away with anything.
Right. If you don't engage with them, it's all about the relationship. Now, it might be harder if you're walking into a venue of 40,000 people to figure out how to engage. So
It'd be amazing how many, all you have to do is get 1 or 2 to stand up. And after that, they're all up.
Well, and I totally, if you get people laughing together, that's a great way for people to feel comfortable with each other.
And so the training you give, to me, makes a whole lot of sense from practical experience. And if you can have fun while you're doing something, what did I tell you when we first came on the air?
Let's make this fun.
Let's make this fun, because if we're having fun, they're going to enjoy it, and they're going to have fun, right?
Right. Right.
And that's what you're doing. By the way, you've got one of the greatest wits. I just love your sense of humor.
Well, we're a bit sarcastic in our family, so.
I don't think so. It's really, really nice. And you seem to be the right person to be handling this kind of job.
Well, I think if you look back, you know, all those decisions you make around your personal or professional life get you to where you are, and for better or for worse, this is where I landed, and it is such a natural fit for me. So I appreciate the opportunity I've been given to lead this organization.
We'll have to do a whole show on anthropology and how it works together. When I said dig something up, I was talking about the traditions of the background of the peoples, not actually bones.
Oh, well, you see.
I know that's archaeology,
Yeah.
but anthropology is really an interesting study because it talks to what people do.
And we are, not to diverge into anthropology, but we are in Hillsborough County, because of the university. USF has such an expertise in an applied anthropology program. It's one of the first in the nation to offer that degree. I would love to have them onto your show, because I think that our community, because so many of us have graduated and have stayed in the community, we're a better community because of it. So we have kind of the secret anthropology handshake. So if you find another anthropologist out there, you're like, great, doing good stuff. So we're all over the place in places you wouldn't expect us to be.
I think another thing you just pointed out was the transitory nature of our society. Used to be, we lived in the same place with the same people and ate the same things, wore the same kind of clothes.
Had the extended family around you.
But that's not the same anymore.
No, especially here in Tampa. Now, I grew up here in Tampa, so I have deep roots here. But if you were in the community behind us here in New Tampa, these are not folks who grew up in Tampa. They usually come, they work for 5 or 6 years in one of the industries that they're in, and then they move on to another destination. So these are not families who have a strong support system. So that's why we are so fortunate that we can offer our services to anybody living here in Hillsborough County, because so many of our families here do not have their support system with them here.
Plus, they're bringing different habits. They're bringing different traditions here. Fortunately, I lived for 40 years in the shadow of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. There was an Air Force town, Fairborn, Ohio, and everybody was from somewhere else.
Right.
And so there weren't inbred types of things going on within the community. And now I live in Sun City Center, which is much the same.
Right.
It's a senior community.
Right. Which is what's so fascinating about Hillsborough County is we have that diversity of rural, you know, out in the south or in the east, suburban, urban. We also have just such a mix of race and ethnicity in Hillsborough County. We are rich in the diversity, which is amazing, but it also is challenging. So for us at Champions, we want to make sure that we can respond in a culturally competent manner to families that we're serving. So we have 40% of our staff can speak another language in addition to English, because we want to make sure that we're helping families in the language that's meaningful for them. But we also want to hire folks that are representative of the communities from which we serve.
Let's talk about how people avail themselves of your services and the kinds of things that you can provide. And I guess the other thing that I'm interested in, I know this is prevention of child cruelty or child problems, but what if somebody sees somebody who's having difficulties? Can they call in and draw attention to it? Or does that go to another agency that has to bounce it to you?
Yeah, so there are a couple of things. So if you do see somebody that's struggling, as we often do in the grocery store, you see an adult who is completely overwhelmed by the experience of maybe a child about to have a meltdown. Maybe they raise their voice because they're starting to get embarrassed by what's happening.
And that's often the case.
Right, because you're embarrassed that you don't feel that you can control your child. So we actually offer a workshop on hassle-free shopping and some strategies of how to get through that shopping experience.
Oh, wonderful.
After you've worked all day.
Is there any charge for your services to the client?
No.
Just to get that out of the way to begin with.
Right.
There's a lot of young families, they don't have any extra money.
Right. So again, we are fortunate that we are able to offer our services at no cost to families here in the county.
And where do they go?
So
Are they different places?
They are different places. So the best thing is to either check out our website at or just Google Champions for Children or www.
We'll put the web right up there so they can copy it off.
And or call our main number. And the way that our website is designed and the way that we're trying to design our services is it's by continuum. So if you have a toddler, you would click on toddler and it would show you everything that we have to offer. If you are pregnant, you click that you're pregnant and it would show you all the services that we have to offer. So we have many different programs, but we don't want people to have to remember the names of 11 different programs. Just remember that if you are pregnant or a parent, we have a support for you. That's all you have to remember. And so to get back to what parents can do is to check out the website.
Let's first, if somebody's outside the parent
and
they see something that needs to be helped, where would they go in order to be able to get somebody to your services?
So Florida is a mandatory reporter state. So if you do witness something where you see a child being harmed or potentially being harmed, you should call the Florida Child Abuse Hotline.
Okay.
So you should just do that. If it's that you see a parent starting to be stressed or struggle, I often use humor and say, "Oh gosh, I remember those days. Boy, that was," and so you just want to normalize that experience for that adult that's going through it. And if you know about Champions, just say, there's this resource in town. You should just give them a call because I took a class on how to have hassle-free shopping, and that really did wonders for me. So maybe you can check it out too.
Those are nice approaches, yes.
Yeah, so it's just really about trying to normalize that experience. There's a stigma around parent education, and we don't understand why that is, but there is. And so we're trying to break that stigma around parent education because we shouldn't be expected to have all the tools.
No, we go to school for lots of things.
Right.
And this is like going to school to be a parent.
This is the most important job you will have. And yet we criticize parents when they have questions about it or want some additional tools. So that's what we are about, is just giving tools to parents and helping them expect and do what's called anticipatory guidance. So when we see a baby's about to start walking, we're like, oh, this is an exciting time. He's about to walk.
We've got one that's walking and one's not quite there, but he'll get there. He's a little bigger.
Right, and so the important thing to tell a parent is that's really great, but right as a baby's about to learn a new skill, all those other things that they've mastered are going to fall apart for a while. So they're going to stop sleeping through the night. So just come to expect that.
There's a give and take on that.
And so we want parents to kind of understand normal child development so they don't think something's going wrong. And if we can we have a conversation with families, we can say, so let's talk about what are some things you can do when they're going to stop sleeping through the night. What are some strategies we can put in place? So hopefully when it's 3 in the morning.
Not a cup of beer, right?
No, we frown upon that. For the parent or the child?
It might be good for...
It's no judging on what helps a parent get through that situation. But really it's about equipping parents with knowledge and tools so that they can make the best decisions for their family. So we really are not telling a parent what to do, because that would not be, you know your child best, you know your grandchildren best, but what are some tools that we can help you with that fit with your personality, your temperament, your family's belief system that's going to help you?
Now, these are generally group classes?
Yes, so that helps build social connections.
I was just going to say, for many young mothers especially, fathers going off course, society is changing.
Right.
But many young mothers staying at home all day with the child,
Very isolating.
They lose contact with their girlfriends who are still going out to bars,
Right.
and yet they're staying home. So this would be a good opportunity for them to meet some people, correct?
Absolutely. So we have one of our most popular services is called Baby Bungalow. And at any week here in Hillsborough County, we have 80 to 90 child development playgroups going on across the county at no cost to families.
And they're across the county,
They're
so there may
across
be
the-
one near you.
Right. So they're all at the Children's Board Family Resource Centers. They're at our office locations in South Tampa. We have Layla's house in Sulphur Springs. So we have 9 to 10 locations any week that's offering these child development playgroups. And we have families who then, they stay together for years and they do the birthday parties together and the play dates together because they've made those connections in our playgroups. And it's that social connection is another protective factor for that child, is that if they are connected to other people, so you can normalize that behavior. It's like, oh, well, their baby's not staying, not sitting still for more than 30 seconds at a time. That must make sure that I'm okay because my baby's not sitting still for 30 seconds at a time.
I remember I was umpiring a softball game, and I had gotten there early, and I was sitting in the stands, and lady had 2 children, one of them sitting there quietly beside her, the other's running all over the stands, and she's hollering at him, get back here, get back. And then finally she turned to all of us and said, I have one good child and one bad one. And I looked at her and I said, ma'am, you have one active child and one quiet child.
Right.
And
Right.
she said, well, that's what I meant. I said, then what he heard.
Right. Right. And that messaging to children is so important. So we really try to understand parents what their cultural beliefs are, but then to help them understand that every moment matters with that child, every word matters. So what are some ways that we can help you have positive language with that
How
child?
about for fathers? I kind of, until our children got to be about 2, I kind of took a back seat. And
yeah.
I'd rather have done, after that I became deeply involved. In fact, my son finally, when he was growing up, looked at me and said, Dad, you were at everything. Every time we turned around, there you were.
How did that make you feel?
And honestly, well, he looked at me and said, Dad, at the time, we thought you were a pain in the ass. He said, but now, 20 years later, I'm glad you were there.
Right. Right.
But getting involved is important.
It is, and science will show we don't do the science, we just know who the smart people are so we can read their work. But the science tells us that dads matter. Dads absolutely matter. And when dads get involved with newborns, the brain reacts differently of these babies. And it's not diminishing the role of moms because they're critical, but dads have a value add. And so the way that men tend to interact with children is much different than how a woman interacts with a child.
Sure.
And so it's that full, robust experience that helps children succeed. We've had this program since 2010 called Boot Camps for New Dads, or 2000, I'm sorry. Boot Camp for New Dads. And dads actually take this when their partner is pregnant. And it is taught by a dad. It is only expecting dads in this group. And it's a rookie veteran model. So these are all rookie dads, never been dads before. They're all like, baby's not real till the baby gets here. Don't know what's going on. And then we have a veteran dad bring his newborn, well, not his newborn, maybe about anywhere from 4 to 8 months. And the moms are like, great, I have a Saturday morning to myself. This is awesome. And so the veteran dad brings the infant, and these rookie dads get to see the veteran dad very comfortable in caretaking, feeding, comforting, changing diapers, and then that baby gets passed around. And oftentimes, that's the first infant that the new dads, expecting dads, have ever held. So we want to normalize that experience. We also talk about how you can support your partner through this huge life change that everybody's about to happen. So we actually have a very long strategy of encouraging dads to participate. We have a program called Frank.
I think everybody ought to go through that.
The boot camp? Yes.
Every dad.
Right. We offer it at most of the birthing hospitals here in Hillsborough County as well.
How big I promise you I wouldn't ask you for numbers, but How many men go through this course a year's time? Roughly, you don't have to be down to the...
Less than 150.
Oh, that's not anywhere near enough, people.
No, there's 17,000 babies born here in Hillsborough County every year, just to give you a scope.
You need to get involved.
Yeah.
Mama's carrying the baby. You can at least go to a class and learn how to treat it well, right?
Right. So we really talk about safe caregiving, safe sleeping, because we are losing too many babies to unsafe sleep situations, and what to happen when you are so frustrated that you think the only response is to shake that baby.
Oh.
So we talk through it. There are going to be times when you think that's the thing to do. So what do you do when you get that frustrated? So we walk through that scenario with our participants.
I just can't, it's beyond me. I know it happens, and too often, but I can't imagine a man taking a child and beating on that child or shaking them till they die. I mean, that's not a man. It's a being of some kind or another.
Well, it's somebody who is at to be so frustrated that that's the response. So since we know that it can be happening, and you're talking about people who've not been sleeping well because the baby may be keeping them up all hours of the night, they're not at their best, they're not thinking, they're reacting. So we want to talk about strategies to deal with that. And
act rather than react.
right, and just leave the baby. Just leave the baby in the crib. They're not going to die from crying. And if you can't control yourself, just walk
Get out of the
away.
room, right.
Get your emotions intact so that you can go be a parent.
We've got about a minute and a half left.
Okay.
What haven't I asked that you just have to get out before the program's over?
Oh, wow. I think we've talked about that. You know, we want to make sure that every parent knows that we're here for them, no matter how old that child is, and that we have from prenatal all the way to age 18, and that we really expect no parent has all the answers. So it's okay. It's okay to say, I don't know what to do. And just give us a call and we'll help you out with that.
I think that's the important thing, is get on the phone.
Yeah. Get on the phone, check out our website.
Nobody's going to judge you if you call and say, look, I'm having trouble.
Right.
I
And
really need help.
You don't even have to be having trouble. You could just say, I just don't know. I have a question. And just check us out.
Amy Hale, Executive Director of Champions for Children, I thank you so much for being on the program with me. You have enlightened me, and I suspect a lot of my listeners.
Well, thank you very much.
And one of these days, I'd love to have you back.
Great. We'll talk anthropology.
I'd like to do that too. Ladies and gentlemen, you're unique, you're special, you're great. Tell yourselves so often, you know, because you are unique, special, and great. Amy, again, thank you for being on the program. We really appreciate it. It's been an enlightening experience.
Great. Thank you
And
very much.
I hope some children will grow up without being damaged as a result of it.
Thank you.
See you on the next Spotlight on Government.